Well, Tom, it had to come someday, sooner rather than later. We're going to act like a pair of tools.
Yeah. To be fair, this one was the one I think this was nearly the jumping off point. Ironically, that it came this late in the season, but this is the one we were like, our sheds are typically full of shit behind our head. Every so often, I'll just ask, "Oh, I see you got a new. Did I see you got a new DeWalt there?
So you got one of them there, huh? One of them boys. It's welcome everybody to the Tom and Gerry show. Let's be fucking here we are again, Tom. We're so in love with our content that we're just like, let's get into the story without even saying hello to everybody. And welcome to the Tom and Gerry show. I'm Gerry McBride. He's Tom O'Mahony. You probably know that already. If you don't know us, how are you all keeping? Sometimes our podcasts are like the one you're about to hear, and sometimes they're not quite as awesome.
If we started with any professionalism, I think people would get annoyed. If we were, welcome everybody to, I think people want to join us on the train that's already rolling, because we need to be hot and going, especially on this particular episode. There's no fluting around here.
Especially on this episode, Tom. This is one where we're going to take you fine ladies and gentlemen and our non-binary friends on a trip around our sheds where we talk about tools, and not necessarily, Tom, about tools themselves. We're going to talk about the men behind the tools. I mean, there's plenty of days you and I are the men behind the tools, Tom, or the tools behind the men.
Yeah.
But here we're going to take a little deep dive into the history of where these tools come from and who put the S-wing in S-wing hammers.
I wanted to do this one for ages because these items become synonymous with everyday life, and yes, we've talked about it. We even looked for sponsorship from Vice Grip last season, whether it be real or not real. We were shouting for sponsorship from it. But in all fairness, these are some of the items that realistically, it's okay to actually call them by, as you would call a vacuum a Hoover. It's okay to call these. That's how iconic these are. So there's no point in just talking through the mechanics of it. Gerry had the great idea of actually deep diving into who made these horn things, what drove them to make these things. And thank Christ they did, because I'm a bit of a tool guy. I hate saying that, but I do take a fierce interest in tools.
And like, for all the tools that I'm about to speak about here now, Tom, from fine craftsmen down through the years, I have very little of them in my tool shed. I've got their knockoff, cheaply made equivalent that I bought for 8 and 10 euros. But we'll not get into that. What we will get into is who and where all these names come from. And indeed, Tom, how easily all these years we've just been, or I know I've certainly been just blowing past these things. Like, for example, I could see a Ford car driving around the place and know that was Henry Ford. I know that much. But at the same time, I see a Stanley knife and I'm like, I guess that's just a type of knife.
Yeah.
Without deep diving into who the fuck it was that put the Stanley in Stanley knives. So what do you say we take these fine folks on us for a trip around the tool shed?
Yes, because we need to get to the Henry Ford. Some of these items deserve the Henry Ford accolades. Everybody knows his story. I think we need to know more about the story of what's in your toolbox.
Yes, and before we get started, if anybody's listening to the podcast and says to themselves, you know what, this one's pretty boring, I think I'll sit this one out. Not really something that I have any interest in. Tom, could I tell them, stick around?
There's a few shockers. There's a few right moments. There is, it ain't all with anything when you go digging into family history.
You go digging into history, leave all preconceived notions at the door. Right, let's go, Tom. What do you say? First and foremost, I want to tell you one thing, buddy. There was no caveman called Seamus Hammer who came up with the idea of tying a rock to a stick to hit things. And there was no Iron Age smelter called Michael Copensaw either. But a lot of the tools in your toolbox owe their names to a number of talented entrepreneurial men who created brands so strong that to this day their names are synonymous with the tools that they brought to market. So what we're going to do is give you a quick history of a few of the more famous names to ever look at an unchiseled piece of wood and say, fuck no, got to do something about that. Now, Tom, just got to put us out in Front Street, all right, before we start. This is a very patriarchal list, okay? Women are barely featured whatsoever throughout. So what we want to say is that that's not us leaving them out, okay? We just didn't say, nah, fuck it, this is a boys' club here. There have been countless innovative female entrepreneurs and inventors through the years. It's just that they seem to have pooled their energies into the study of, say, radioactivity or stem cell isolation, while the men we're about to discuss focused on making the best damn spirit level they could.
Mary Curie's book, her notebook, is still it's on display, but it has to be in a sealed vacuum because it's so radioactive. Mary was doing, the dangerous shit at the coalface while lads were probably making the hammer that she needed to split that atom or whatever she was doing. That'll tell you.
Yes, exactly. And of course, like, these days, who gets all the credit, whose name trips off the tongue, who's charging out of the two of them, who is charging €40 for a fucking all right hammer down your local hardware shop. But we've mentioned this name a couple of times, Tom, so we're going to start with them. We're going to start with Stanley, one of the more prestigious tool brands on the market here in Ireland and indeed around the world, and a favourite of workmen who don't mind spending a few extra quid. This is one I mentioned here, Tom, because I do mind spending a few extra quid. I reckon if I buy a hammer for a fiver while there's a hammer there for 20 quid, I'll get a fiver's worth of work out of my fiver hammer.
But here's the thing, and I've worked with both, and I have both. The idea being is if you're going to be swinging that hammer 10,000 times during a week, tacking, I don't know, roof battens, you're going to want a decent one because your wrist is going to be hanging off you. You want a very least, an E-swing or something decent, like even a Stanley hammer. But if you're getting the €5 thing with a stamped Asian name on the bottom of it, it's going to break your hand. But Jerry, who's swinging a hammer on a Saturday morning to straighten out a thing, by all means.
Here's the thing as well. I'm not going on a site now. I've never been on a site in my life to do work. Been on a site to sell things and be a penance, but I've never gone on a site to do work. So I can only imagine you that has worked on sites. I can only imagine the slagging a man would get if he shows up with a fucking Talatools hammer.
It can swing both ways. Building sites, Jerry, are essentially an extension of hairier versions of junior cert lads, if you know what I mean. So yes, I do. You can turn up with a piece of shit and get slagged to high heaven, go, what in the Christ are you doing? But then you can turn up with the Festool €750 chop saw and people go, oh, get herself, so you got to ride it up the middle. So typically, shall we say, the everyman tool is the safest one to have. The only things I ever advise people, because they're always messaging us asking about tools and stuff, the only thing I ever say to people, if you're going to you'll get most jobs done with any old heap of shit, bar drill bits. That's about it. Bar drill bits. They're the only thing that'll break your heart if you get piece of shit ones from the middle aisle in Aldi. Sorry, it's just if you get good drill bits, the piece of shit you put them into doesn't really matter. You just need it to go round and round really quickly.
We'll absolutely get into that, but let's go with Stanley first now. If you want to know who put the Stanley in Stanley tools, well, that would be Frederick Trent Stanley, born in the 1800s in Connecticut. Freddie, along with his brother William, bought a share in a local brass foundry in the 1830s, forming Stanley Woodruff and Company before going on to become Stanley Bolt Manufacturing in 1842. So taking the money that he made from selling bolts at the time when everybody wanted bolts, Frederick spun off a separate company called Stanley Works to make hinges.
Perfect.
Gotta get that fucking hinge money too, Tom.
Just look over your shoulder, Jared. That door behind you could have been made in the 1800s. And what would it have needed?
It would have needed hinges.
A minimum 2. One will never work. Minimum 2. You almost no product you can create needs 2 of them. But hinges, they're good for nothing by themselves.
This is it. I mean, like Frederick, it's important to note that Stanley started off with a lot of ironmongery rather than actual tools. He didn't just come blasting straight out the gate with tools. So you're looking at there, he's got his bolt company first, bolt manufacturing, and then he teams up and goes off and creates the hinges as well. The bolt manufacturing, Tom, this is the mid 1800s. Industry is ramping up and nobody has fucking time to pound rivets anymore. We need to bolt shit together. I'm not saying the man invented bolts by no means, but it got to a point where everyone was like, bolts, get them now. Get a lot of them. So it was very easy to make a lot of money in bolts. That's where the money was in the 1800s, Tom. Fixins.
Do you know what? And it's still there. You look at amazing brands, that produce bolts today. Worth, probably the best one out there at the minute. But it was probably one of the understated inventions worldwide. If people want to go back, if you haven't listened to our Fred Dibna episode, Fred took pride in going back to fucking the Stone Age, creating rivets and hammering them like hell into the thing. But Fred was doing it for his own fun. A bolt would have probably saved his marriage.
Bolt will save you.
Do you know what I mean? Because you could just thread it on, ratchet it home, and that's it. You're not smelting and hammering at the hot roasting molten metal through a hole.
So while Frederick Stanley's cleaning up on bolts and hinges, there's a separate company formed by a cousin of his called Henry Stanley. Henry Stanley made a company called the Stanley Rule and Level Company. And he did that by merging a company called the Hall and Knapp Company, which made plumb bobs and levels, and the A. Stanley Company, which made rulers and shit like this. See, this is what it was back in the day, Tom. What did you need if you needed to build things in the mid-1800s?
Straight lines and levels. That's it.
Straight lines and levels.
But go back to even the pyramid times. Them boys had their engineering worked out, and it was the number one thing. They had to work out a level using a bowl of water, because water will always find its level.
Water will always find its level, yeah.
You drill a hole in the top of both sides at the top at the water level, stick a pipe through it, and now you got a level. Anything up and down of that, when you look through it as your little telescope, it's a level. I like the old Henry here. Henry went, it's a great name, lads, but I think we can take down the engineering route. We cover all sides. We cover all. This is covering all bases. You know, the whole family is in on this. I love it.
Exactly. And the Stanley boys, I'm gonna tell you, Stanley boys appear to have been like a good family, a family of a lot of them. You know, that it wasn't that they had brothers and sisters that were running away off gallivanting. I mean, one lad is making hinges, the other lad's making levels. That's a fucking family going places.
Isn't it?
And go places they did, Tom, because as the years roll on, Stanley Works, as they were now known, bought up more and more patents to add to their lineup of tools. They added hammers, and then they started adding screwdrivers. So they started off with like levels and plumb bobs and such like. And then, hey, okay, there's money in hammers. Let's get some hammers. There's money in screwdrivers. Let's get some screwdrivers. Until in 1870, they began to release the product that would put them on the map, Tom. Wood planes.
And I tell you one thing, for anybody wondering about a wood plane, they're like, what's the big deal with a wood plane? My grandfather, Ger, had a Stanley wood plane. I was delighted you included this. He had a Stanley wood plane that I'd say he had from the 50s, and he still had it up mid-2000s. Like, do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And all he do is put an edge on it using the bench grinder, and she'd work on again. Like, and to watch a wood plane in action is so therapeutic.
Oh, it's nice.
Oh, people.
It's nice.
It's for anybody going, what the fuck is a wood plane? It has no wings. This is the thing that shaves down. You pass it over. It's like essentially a Gillette for timber, isn't it? It just shaves
It's exactly
off.
what it is, Tom.
If you have a gammy door that's sitting a bit, wonky, that's been hinge bound, or that maybe the frame has gone out of whack, you just get out your old plane, and it'll just take off less than millimeters each time you go for a pass. But God, it's beautiful when you see a sharp plane.
It's nice. It's nice, and I can see how Stanley got here. They're making levels, they're making plumb bobs. So if you're making a level and you find out that your piece of timber, your rafter, your joist, whatever it is not level, what are you going to need? What's the next thing you're going to need, Tom? You're going to need a plane to level it off. And Stanley was leaving all that money on the table, and he thought, hang on a second, we've got levels and planes and plumb bobs over here telling people their shit's not level, so let's just sell them the planes as well. So that's exactly what they did. Now, Stanley had been making tools here like hammers and screwdrivers, as we'd said, and they were fine. People liked them. They had nothing against them. But the Stanley planes were a huge hit. They were so well made, and they were so easy to find the plane you wanted. In the Stanley catalogue, numbered from the Stanley number 1 plane all the way up to, eventually, as time went by, the Stanley 300 plane, these tools were a favourite among workers. They were easy to sharpen, they were well machined, and almost impossible to break. And in fact, as you said yourself there with your grandfathers, if you could find any one of these 150-year-old Stanley planes today, drop a WD-40, rub of a whetstone, she's good as new by.
But it was par for the course. You wouldn't be. It was the Jerry McBride rule. TNA throwing nothing away.
Throwing nothing away.
Fix the thing, but shit wasn't made to break. I was only discussing it with my wife today. We passed a 1997 Toyota Land Cruiser, Jerry, which the 97 models and backwards all were built up the road from the actual factory to built to military grade, with 25-year expectancy on all their bolts and engine parts. And then they realized, wait a fucking minute, nobody's fucking coming back for parts, because this shit stays together. You could fix it yourself. Nothing breaks. Just like these Stanley stuff back in the day. The grandfather kept it for the guts of 60 years, and it planed all sorts.
Honestly, they were made military is good there, but the Stanley planes were made just like the rifles going into World War I and World War II. Meaning to say, if you're out in battle and your rifle gets gammed up, you can pick up your fallen comrade's rifle, strip the bolts out of it that you want, and put your rifle back together on the fly, and away you go. If you have a plane and it doesn't work, you can get a replacement part pretty handy, drop it back in. If you have another plane on the site at the time, you can take the blade out of it, put it back into yours. We can keep working. You can never stop producing. And back in the late 1900s, as we're talking about here, beg your pardon, late 1800s, early 1900s, that's what people wanted. Tradesmen didn't have money to throw away. They just wanted to pick up a tool and plane all fucking day. And the Stanley planes allowed them to do just that. And they just got more and more popular.
I only had a vague memory the other day. And while I was reading down through the notes and going back and forth, I remember him teaching me how to sharpen drill bits. So yes. Never throw a drill bit away. And it was like he had drill bits, Gerry, and they were like the butt of a fag. There was almost no drill bit left. But people don't conceive that you can actually get a life out of a drill bit rather than it just going, nah, that's just a drill bit. I mean, how many drill bits have you lost in your life? Rakes.
We're a disposable culture, Tom. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on disposable culture. I mean, the band, the Saw Doctors, get their name from the trade saw doctoring, which was a doctor that you brought your saw to resharpen it and reset the teeth of it. That was a guy's trade, setting your saw. Rather than, you know what, that one's getting a bit of blunt. Fuck it out and go out and buy a 12 euro another one.
Fucking hell. Wow. Never actually. That's some nugget of information. This is what we're coming here for, people.
I'm not a fucking page into this document, Tom. Here's what I will say. Even though you could replace parts on a Stanley plane and keep it forever, that is not the case for humans. Frederick himself died in 1883, just years before his company would go on to become one of the biggest tool powerhouses in the world. In 1920, with the merger of Stanley Bolt Manufacture and Stanley Rule and Level, everything under one house, they came together. And this is what I was going to tell you, Tom. Stanley didn't necessarily invent anything. But what they would do is they would buy up patents and they would bring them to market. So somebody else would invent a thing and it would be good and they would patent it. But they wouldn't have the money to mass produce it or get it out here. They're literally selling things out of their shed out the back. Stanley would find these patents, say, hey, that's a good-looking machine. We'll buy the patent off you, and we have the money to mass-produce it and sell it out to the market. And while we're at it, you seem to have a good head on your shoulders, kid. Come on, and we'll give you a job, and we'll, depending on who you listen to, we'll either make you a very rich man, or we'll bilk you out every idea you ever had, and fuck you out, leave you penniless, okay?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the JML, metric, isn't it? Oh, you got a new map? We'll help you make that map.
We'll help you get it out there. That's how the world goes. So we couldn't exactly say that Stanley invented any of the tools that we use today, but they did bring, like I say, all these patents to mass market, including things we take for granted today, such as the tape measure, which there were measures before. I mean, your great granny had an inch tape that she rolled up in her pocket and she would measure things with, but the retractable measuring tape, like you and I would know today, it's not a Stanley invention, but Stanley would have brought it to the mass market in its current form. And also, not for nothing, Tom, in 1936, the release of perhaps their most famous product, the Stanley Utility Knife.
This is their Hoover moment. And all the things you named that they were after getting their hands on and selling and creating and everything. There is only a Stanley knife. It is the Hoover. It is the Hoover.
It is the Hoover. Yeah, exactly. If you say to someone, throw me a Stanley, what are they going to throw you? They're not going to give you a hammer or a chisel.
You'll hear it sometimes in movies, they'll call it a box cutter. When they got to call it a box cutter because they can't use Stanley's name. But I guarantee you, it's still a Stanley knife. There's no two ways about it.
Stanley knife. And what's in a Stanley knife, Tom?
Stanley blades.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
I've been on the receiving end of a Stanley blade more times than I care to mention. And I'm not exactly talking about stick-ups in town, or I haven't been held up. Thank the fuck Christ. But I've gotten cut with a Stanley blade more often than I care to mention, and I could point it out to you like Lethal Weapon 3, all the scars on my hands and indeed on my fucking thigh where a Stanley blade slipped and I just stuck myself right in the leg.
You see that? You see that cut?
Is that fresh?
Brand new, just before this. Was that a Stanley? Stanley knife, cut in a bit of roofing felt that I have on a project outside. It slipped and sliced across the back of my hand. And that blade has been in there. I mean, it's been in there a while, even though I have a pack of new ones, I haven't broken into them. But, that's just me. Get everything I can out of the bastard.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing I'm going to tell you on Stanley knife cuts that I've received, Tom. And like I'm not saying, hey, go out and get a bunch. They're great. Don't wish them on anybody. But a Stanley knife cut is clean. Like it's straight.
A doctor has told me that they're almost unstitchable because they're that clean. If you go into A&E with a Stanley knife bad cut, they'll glue it. These days they'll actually glue it because it's like there's no point in stitching this thing. It's too clean.
Like I've hit myself with like chisels, hammers, everything, and it's more they don't necessarily cut you, they more like burst you.
Yeah,
and that's no good. So like there's that Stanley knives. You probably have one in your house. If you don't, what the hell are you cutting carpet with? If you're not cutting carpet with, what the fuck are you doing with a weekend?
Stanley knife in a metaphorical sense. A Stanley knife cut is your mother telling you, I'm not mad at you, I'm just fucking disappointed.
Yeah.
Oh, right to the bone. Where somebody giving out yards again is an old blunt old chisel just taking a chunk off your fingernail or something. But a Stanley knife cut is your mother saying that to you. And that's
if you cut yourself with a Stanley knife, Tom, and I'm not saying like you deserve it or anything like that, but the Stanley knife didn't skip.
Exactly.
It's not like a console that hit a thing and skipped, or it's not like a bandsaw that kicked off, or you didn't hit the safety on it or anything like that. It's a fucking knife, Tom. It's a blade. It's going nowhere until you put it there.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you're not watching what you're doing, but what I'll say is every Stanley knife cut that I have, that's my stupidity. I done that to myself.
You took your eye off it. Simple as that. You
took your eye off it. I didn't respect it, Tom.
And that's the problem, because it's a word that's just bandied about so much. If it was called a hell knife, maybe then people would give it a bit more respect.
Yeah,
but because it's just
people stop. It's a Stanley. It's cute.
They make plumb bobs, don't they? Plumb bobs. Anybody who's wondering what a plumb bob, we mentioned it honestly about 70 times at the top of the show. Plumb bob is a very simplistic thing that was used as far back as the Romans, and it is a conical piece of metal weight that's tied to the end of a string that if you tie it to the top of a column to see if it's straight, and it hangs down and there's a different distance between the string at the bottom than there is at the top, the plumb bob will hold it straight as per the Earth's axis and gravity and all the rest of it.
Yeah,
you've got a fucking problem with your column, basically.
Yeah. Same with a spirit level. It's a bubble of water in a tiny little vial. If it's a little bit to the left, not level. A little bit to the right, not level. Bang in the middle, it's level. That's simple physics, Tom.
If you ever end up taking a job in construction, or you have a family friend who's going to take a job in construction, and on their first or second day, somebody sends them down to Jerry McBride's hardware shop for a box of fucking bubbles for the spirit level, it's a ruse. It's not
but at the same time, they're sending you away from your place of work on what is clearly a prank errand. So I would go, and I would take 5 hours to do it.
I definitely don't. I go get some ice cream, hang out.
Go get some ice cream, hang out. Go fucking watch a bit of YouTube on beside a lake somewhere. They're paying you to do this, and they told you to fucking go. Any rate, there you go. So we were talking about plumb bobs and levels and all that, because at the time, Tom, think about back where we were here. People didn't need 9-speed Kango hammers with LED lights when you press the trigger. They wanted everything to be straight. And if it wasn't straight, they needed the tools to make it straight. Very simple, excellent planes that you could replace parts in. Excellent utility knives, as we're talking about here, that the tool itself would last you a lifetime. You just had to replace the blades that were in it. And you had yourself a perfectly functioning box cutter. Or, to your point, if we want to call it what it is, a people cutter. And that's what made Stanley, today, one of the biggest hardware and tool companies in the world. Stanley is still going stronger than ever and making more and more acquisitions and requirements. And we went through like 15 different companies that they bought up to get to become where they are today. And the last company that they bought up, Tom, was one that just helped them reach even greater heights. They're major in 2010, only 11 years ago, with our next pair of famous toolboxers, Tom, Black and Decker.
Black and Decker. I get nostalgic and misty-eyed. You know the way people love like reality TV and they go, "Oh God, do you remember the old Big Brother? Do you remember? Oh God, I love that." People love that shit, and they say, I get nostalgic about Black and Decker because it's a bit kiddie, possibly not up there with the strongest one, but everybody should start with a Black and Decker. They will never let you down. I still have my first one. It's got to be 20 years old. Right here.
I got one right here, and as we'll get into it going forward, it was the same. Not to jump ahead in the podcast, but it was the same rule with the Stanley tools up there. If it doesn't work, you can fix it. Very simply. There's like 10 things in this.
What I liked about the Black & Decker, and a lot of the other ones don't do, is the Black & Decker, it had two options. Yes, you could take the battery off and charge it on the pack that it came in, but hidden in the handle was a little 12-volt, little pin. You could plug it, and you'd find them, they plug in everything from kids' toys to fans.
Yes.
And like, because I lost it. I lost it in a move one time. I lost it. And all of a sudden I'm going, this thing is redundant now. And as I lifted my middle finger, lo and behold, there was a little fucking port for a charging thing. I'm like, are you joking me? I need never take the battery off. Wow. Black & Decker, tip of the cap.
I gotta tell you, another thing that stands in Black & Decker's favor is that it is two of them, and people love the ands out of it. I mean, like, hey, think about who we grew up with, non-tool related. Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, Cannon and Ball. There's just something about a duo that says, hey, you know what? I might not like one of these guys, but there's a spare. I'm bound to like something here. Tom and Gerry.
Just say it. I'm just throwing it out there.
So, Black & Decker, if you thought that Black & Decker was not actually people's names and it was, in fact, something you do with the tools, I don't know, do you blacken things? Is it for decking? No. It's a guy called Black and it's a guy called Decker. S. Duncan Black and Alonzo G. Decker. Both born in Baltimore in 1883 and 1884, respectively, but with very different childhoods. So while S. Duncan Black had a comfortable family life and completed high school, Decker's dad died when he was just 7, and he found himself working from an early age in a foundry where his job was ladling molten brass.
I love that. Like, our kids of today. I used to do a bit about, when we were growing up in the country and getting man jobs early doors, like, but I mean, nothing to that extent, but, people get excited when they see their 15-year-old getting a 10-hour a week job in Tesco's.
Yeah,
and they're
stacking shelves or something.
Look at him, isn't he? Oh, I tell you, he's like a proper little man going off on his packed lunch and everything. They're like, are you fucking joking me?
Yeah, and fucking Alonzo G. Decker here is working in the end scene of Terminator 2. And he's not working a molten brass machine. He is ladling molten brass. He's taking scoops of molten metal out of it like he's taking ice cream. Like
at age 7, Jar, we were going around with our communion money thinking we'll buy the world's amount of sweets, thinking we were great. And this lad is probably, he's smoking probably 20 a day at this stage, because why wouldn't you?
I mean, I gotta say, in my research, I found out that his dad died when he was 7. I'm not saying that he buried his dad and started working in the brass foundry.
I bet he did. Day. Baltimore's a tough town. It's a tough town, Gerry.
But he probably didn't stick around all that long. So he's working in this foundry, and he's not just ladling brass. Some people would say, okay, well, this is my life. I'm ladling brass for the rest of my day. But Decker, while he was there, showed an aptitude for machinery. He could fix things. He could make things. If the molten brass wasn't flowing the way people wanted to do, he could fix it up for them. So that saw him rise from the more menial side of engineering all the way to a nice sales job with a company called National Cosmotype, where he busts his balls sealing a $1 million deal with a UK businessman called Lord Nordcliffe for automatic type molding machines. Decker's job being to demonstrate and sell said items. Now, I'm going to get ahead of you here, Tom. I don't think he's 8 doing this, okay?
Yeah.
He was a fast riser, but he wasn't that good.
I just imagine this kid going, hey, what's happening, Lord Northcliffe?
Hey, Lord Northcliffe.
What can I do to help you today? And you're like, is this a child speaking to me?
Yeah, it's just rocking up going like, I can't help but notice that you're molding type by hand over there. Well, what I got for you here, say, is an automatic type molding machine. Now, I don't fucking know what type molding is. I'm assuming it's something to do with the printing process. But that was his job. And as a sales rep, Tom, I know as a sales rep now, nothing's easy. Don't get me wrong. I was a sales rep myself for 6 months until I was asked by the people that employed me to not work there anymore.
I lasted 1 day as a sales rep. Yeah.
It's I can't do it. But back then, what Decker here was doing was basically he was taking the machine around from business to business. Could I have a half hour out of your day, set you up, show you the machine, show you it working, and how many can I put you down for? None, you say. okay, well, I'm going to put this goddamn machine back into my trunk and fuck off. This is where you literally see guys hauling around these big planes, trains, and automobiles, fucking trunks.
The Founder is the name of a movie.
The
And
Founder, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, well done. Yeah,
Michael Keaton. He basically took over McDonald's and took it off the McDonald's brothers, but he was selling ice cream. And back then, it wasn't just going around with a couple of tubs of ice cream or a fucking, a chart.
He was selling milkshake
machines. Right. But a fucking big lump of chrome he'd have to bring into the shop and show him the thing in action.
And show it and demonstrate it. And yeah, that's what it was back in the day. And that is what we find Alonzo G. Decker doing. So he's delighted with his good work. He's fucked off over to the UK with this business called National Cosmotype. And he sealed his $1 million deal with this UK businessman. But here's the thing. Delighted and all as he was, the deal went south because National Cosmotype fucked around too much with supply and such like, and the deal fell through. So Decker says, you know what? Fuck this. I can't work with these clowns that just let a $1 million deal that probably would have made me slip through their fingers just by lollygagging and whatever else they were doing at the time. So he goes, fuck this. I'm going to go and take a job at a crowd called Roland Telegraph, which was where he met and became friends with S. Duncan Black.
$1 million in any business. Back then, that's $1 billion stuff. Like,
telling you,
Jesus Christ Almighty, that's like landing a Tesla fucking contract or something.
Yeah, and fucking Alonso's there with burn marks from hot molten brass in his shirt.
He's 8 years of age, for Christ's sake, and he managed to bring Lord Northcliffe on board, and they shit the bed on the deal. I mean,
there you go.
He's like, you're making me look like a fool up in here. I'm a yeah. Christ, I'm angry on his behalf.
What do you think about Lord Northcliffe, Lord that he was, waiting around 3 weeks and his automatic typesetting machines haven't come? You know? These machines still, bloody machines aren't here.
Tell me, boy, have you seen my machines? Have they arrived? Christ. Yeah, I imagine a Boris Johnson-esque guy with a monocle, though. And like a Monopoly man hat and
like a little fucking like the fucking peanut guy made real.
But then you know what? Isn't it always the way though, Gerald? If somebody has the drive, the abs, like he must be outstanding, fucking standing to go from the outlet dying, ladling brass, landing a $1 million deal. And then I mean, all those stages. Something was going to fall. The universe was going to align for him. And he ran into S. Duncan Black over at Roland Telegraph.
Would you like to know what the S stands for in S. Duncan Black?
I really want to know.
So would I, Tom. So would I, because I could not find that. I couldn't find it anywhere.
I went looking. I'm like,
literally anywhere.
That's like some Prince level shit, isn't it? You know what I mean? I'm known as the artist now.
Like this, this is real like common at the time, and indeed, like I know the only other example I can tell you straight off the bat is I know there's an actor called Emmett Walsh, and I can find his name. His name is Michael Emmett Walsh, but I don't know why you would be called Michael Emmett Walsh and just say to yourself, "Fuck it, no, I don't like the sound of that."
Or M. Night Shyamalan.
Or M. Night Shyamalan. Why would you change your name? Why would I turn around and say, "Okay, from now on, I am G. Thomas McBride"? That's my second name is Thomas, by the way.
Oh, T. Patrick O'Mahony. Yeah, that actually does have a bit of a mysterious ring to it.
Actually,
I like it.
I'm actually kind of selling it to myself now. The more I say
it, I kind of fucking like it.
Yeah,
I kind of like it.
All right, okay. Hey, what can we say?
I love that we've gone all the way through the 20th century. We're now into the 20s of the 21st century, and we can find out how many fucking hairs were on Queen Victoria's head. But nobody knows why this fella's called S. I fucking love that. That's gangster as shit, that is.
If you out there know what the S stands for in S. Duncan Black, let us know in the comments. But until then, let's move on. So S. Duncan Black had a middle-class upbringing, and he was hired by Roland Telegraph after graduating from high school. I fucking love that. You know what I mean, Tom? Like, Alonso's out here not going to school at all, just living the life, and he fucking lands the same job as this guy that actually graduated school. Something about that appeals to me. But regardless, like Decker, Black was gifted in both engineering and sales, and after the pair had met up and become friends and an accomplished team, they were faced with a difficult decision about whether to stay at Roland, where there was little room for upward mobility, or branch out and start a business of their own. Spoiler alert, Tom, what do you think they did?
I know, but you know what? These are sliding doors moments, Jar, aren't they? I can guarantee you. as we're looking at the boys here in their history of their time together, I can tell you here now, neither one of those boys have a lock of childer, and they haven't chicken or child. I guarantee fucking to you they haven't. Well, Decker sure shit doesn't anyway. He doesn't.
Well,
no fucking way.
How would the Tom? They're both 9 years of age. I don't know. I think they may have been married, but regardless of whether they had chicken or child, Tom, was a brave move to go, because there's a lot to be said for money in the pocket versus money down the road. So there is.
Would you see whatever about Decker or Black? Black has just been nothing but net, up middle class. Things went well.
Yeah.
Was hired, walked straight into rolling.
Black was going to do okay.
Yeah, but Decker got to this point and went, listen, man, I've been smashing it. I was ladling brass last month. I mean, literally, I hadn't even time to go to my communion. Fuck's sake.
The brass I ladle has not set yet. Those hinges are still floppy.
And this is where he's at. So I no doubt Black or Decker would have been all in, chips all across the table, going, I got nothing to lose, because I'll go back hauling fucking type fucking machines in the trunk of my fucking Model T Ford, clip clopping around it.
Yeah, I still got Lord Northcliffe's number. I'll sell him something.
Yeah.
But you know what? In the end, the pair said, fuck it. Okay, Black & Decker, I like the sound of it. They formed their engineering outfit, known as, indeed, the Black & Decker Company. They put as much thought into the naming of it as we did to this podcast, Tom. In 1910, and they did so with financial backing from investors and the assurances from several loyal customers down through the years that they would carry their business over. So this is like, when you lose a sales rep, you don't lose a sales rep. You lose everybody that he's ever been friendly with. When he goes to this is all. Am I wrong, Tom?
You're 100% right, and I'd say Roland. Can you imagine if Roland? We should look at if Roland's still up, and I can imagine how sick they were losing them two boys and knowing they were going off.
I don't know. I mean, they might sponsor that Roland Garros tennis tournament, but other than that, I don't know.
I wonder who the financial backing came from. I wonder did old Northcliffe get a phone call? I wonder.
He doubtlessly did. I remember. I think I read it that Decker sold a car to Black's father, and that made up part of the money.
Fair play. The old man went, because he probably didn't need the car. You know what I mean?
He probably didn't need the car. But I'll tell you who did need the car. Decker needed a fucking car. He didn't need to sell it as much as Black's dad needed to buy it. But regardless of which, they got their money, and they had business as well, which is the big thing. The Lord Nordcliffes of this world, who knew that Alonso was a good worker and that he'd been fucked around with all the other places, said, look, this kid's good. He knows what he's up to. He's doing well for a 10-year-old. Let's just fucking... Let's give him a couple of jobs and see how he does. So the Black & Decker company had initial success creating machines to order. So they weren't like, okay, hey, let's go make a load of screwdrivers. They were like, what do you want us to make? And we'll make it for you.
That's how Dell make their money. That's how Dell got so big. They didn't have a big warehouse waiting full of stuff to be sold. They made to order.
Exactly. So what they made first was things like milk bottle toppers for assembly lines. And they made a device for sewing the pocket on your shirt for another assembly line. Basically, industry would come and say, listen, I need X. Can you make it for me? They'd say, here's a price. Here you go. Here's the machine. Away it goes. And we'll service it and we'll do after sales and all that kind of crack. So they're at this for several years, for quite some time, until they struck it big with the release, Tom, of the first truly portable electric drill.
I mean, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, that's a gargantuan moment in history. The portable drill. Even to this day, if you don't have them, I was looking at a thing the other day about getting a piece of granite drilled, and I'll have to take it to an engineering firm to do it.
Yes.
But that was the way of it before. You either burnt a hole in it like Fred did, then drove a roasting hot fucking rivet into that thing, or you took your lump of metal to a foundry or an engineering shop and they drilled it for you.
You brought the mountain to Muhammad. You brought whatever you needed to be drilled to a place that had a drill, and there were the big tower machines. If you've ever seen the thing where you crank it down, you pull down the crank and it drills a hole straight down in whatever you put on it.
Bought one the
Oh
other
yeah,
day.
tower. I love a tower drill, Tom.
Safe as houses, they won't rip the fucking arm off you. You know what I mean? Because that's the thing to keep people. The amount of times we get messaged and asked what drill people should buy, it happens more often than you can imagine. But I would say, if you are drilling something, especially metal, by Jesus Christ, have your cord and cable well back and know where you're standing, because if that thing bites, woo, be ready to let go.
There you go. But the original Black and Decker drill took that big tower machine, which was a beast of a yoke, and they said, let's make it smaller, and made it into a handheld drill, Tom. And I'll throw some of the pictures of it up on the social. But the 1911 Black and Decker drill doesn't look all that different from the drill that you buy today, except for the housing of it and a few other changes. It is basically the same concept and, roughly speaking, the same size.
The outfit still has his one, and it's older than me. It has to be older than me. Now you can see the bushings have been changing a good few times. You can see it sparking inside and stuff, but that thing would go through fucking hell and back for you. It's still going. It's had a bunch of different flexes. It's had a bunch of different plug heads. Like I said, the bushings have been changed out in it, but it still goes.
Yeah. And here's the thing, Tom. If you're wondering how we went from that tower drill design to the pistol grip design that we're more familiar with now, and why drills these days look like guns, and is that like playing to the male ego that they want to feel like they have a gun on their hands? No. Where it comes from is that Black & Decker were at the time working on engineering fixes for Colt. That's the handgun people, the Colt Peacemaker. Mm-hmm. Colt made guns, so they needed machinery to machine better guns, and they wanted a few little tweaks, and they wanted to bring out a new model. So Black & Decker were drawing all that up for them. So when they scored that gig, they found that the handgun's pistol grip would be the ideal design for a one-person electric drill. Hey, this sits real nice in the hand, Tom. What if we had a drill that was like that? So it took them a couple of years, but they invented, perfected, and patented the trigger-activated drill design that has remained more or less unchanged for 100 years. And when they did that, Tom, they cleaned the fuck up.
I'm not joking with you. This is up there with the invention of the combustion engine. Albeit, this is actually up there with the wheel.
This is up there with seeing mold on bread and saying to yourself, hang on a second.
Penicillin. Or beer, as we talked about. But I swear to God, I cannot even get the words to properly point out how much of an unbelievably big moment this was, because to take the gun, which obviously, I mean, the gun in itself was just a genius thing, whatever you're
guns
feeling,
work, Tom.
Guns work, whatever you feel. But I mean, the engineering of the gun, phenomenal. To think you can shoot metal rocks out of your hand at 1,000,000 miles an hour and kill somebody. Amazing. But
using little explosions.
To put that across, like, I mean, there's so many things. I've worked on so many machines. I remember working on a bulldozer years ago. It was like a D9. It was a big bulldozer, but the fucking convoluted, we're talking, it was one from the 70s. The convoluted way you had to pull down this lever to push this, like there was 6 pedals. There was 6 pedals there, and there was 9 fucking handles. And you had to pull this thing to lift this. You're like, how the fuck? Who decided this is enough? It is enough. We're going to jump to just making two handles and two pedals and get it all working into one. This is literally the index finger, Ger, because this goes so far. This just doesn't end at drills. That thinking was brought to chop saws. It was brought to, you name it, screw guns. It was brought to jigsaws. That handle and trigger finger.
Let's put it in people's hands. I mean, like, and again, Alonzo Black and S. Duncan Decker now, they're not sitting up in the tool shed or in their garage making these things, okay? At this stage, they're wealthy industrialists. They've got people underneath them. So we're not saying that they, quote-unquote, invented these things, but what they did was they bought up a whole pile of patents and put them together. So some guy somewhere had a patent for a trigger-activated switch. All right, yeah, we'll take that. Some guy had armature, some guy had brushes, some guy had chucks, some guy had such and such. They bought all that, they put it all together. Their research and development team put it all together, but Christ knows they fucking bankrolled it and weren't ready to release it until they were happy. But when this thing hit, Tom, forget about it. Exactly as you said, if you needed something drilled, all of a sudden you could walk over and drill it. And this put Black & Decker on the road to success. I mean, think about the time you're talking about here, Tom. 1910 to 1920 in America. The Depression. What comes after that? A world war. What comes after that? Another fucking world war. But throughout all that, whatever the world threw at humanity, people needed drills.
What are the options? You're going to hand crank it yourself? I mean, they're lovely for nostalgia, those hand drills. Like they are. Like New York could not have happened. You know, the skyscrapers in Chicago couldn't have happened.
Whatever you were doing, Tom, if you're working with stone, you can drill it. If you're working with metal, you can drill it. If you're working with timber, you can drill it. You're not working with any of those things, you don't need to drill anything. That's okay. You can take this and put a brush in it. Now you can buff things, you can sand things, you can, hey, I work in an automotive industry. Can you tweak that design and make it so I can just blast on nuts on a wheel? Yeah, absolutely. You can do whatever the fuck you want with the design that they had come up with. And they cleaned the fuck up. Forget about it.
But brilliantly that they had the patent on every single item. You know what I mean? But these boys, you see, had started in the engineering floor down there. I mean, they're still only 11 years of age at this stage. Like clearly, the lads know where they're at. Go from the bottom. Well, especially Decker went from the bottom rung of the ladder. He knew the whole way up the best way to court money, and now they've got smart business people behind them going, don't just own the thing, own everything related. So if Johnny DeWalt over there wants our trigger, he's going to pay for our trigger.
Yeah,
simple as that.
Yeah,
you know,
we've got the patent for it.
Yeah. Oh, so I love that.
That's it. They made shitloads of money, and they did okay life-wise. They both passed away in their 70s in the 1950s, in the mid-1950s, or thereabouts in their 70s. Alonzo G. Jr., who was the son of Alonzo G. Sr., as you would imagine, he became president of the Black & Decker company in 1951 after his dad passed away, and he stayed on the board until 2000 when he was 92 years of age.
That's so movie America, isn't it? Like it's, you know, they're all down on the shop floor, whatever. He's up there and he's got a big cigar and he's old man Decker. You know what I mean?
He's old man Decker. Yeah.
And he's still writing the Christmas bonuses. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And I believe one of the Decker family went on and became a high-ranking guy in the military, and was sent to chase down a team of crack commandos who escaped from a military stockade for a crime they didn't commit.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Brilliant. We got the crowbar in the A-team. I'm so excited.
There you go. And that was Black & Decker. As we say, they merged with Stanley in 2010 to become Stanley Black & Decker. Again, another one from the Tom and Gerry naming conventions. And they remain a household item, a household name to this day, not just with drills. They did not rest on their drill laurels. They made a whole bunch of shit, constantly bringing innovative and affordable new products to houses around the world, Tom, and indeed off-planet as well, such as the Dustbuster. The Black & Decker Dustbuster, which was released commercially in 1979. And, you know, say what you want about the Dustbuster, it's a handy wee thing. But that initially came about from the company's work with NASA on the Apollo project and was initially designed to hoover up samples of dust and rocks from the surface of the moon.
Hoovering the fucking moon. I mean, where?
Hoovering the moon!
Now, let's go all the way back to making your communion, carrying around molten brass.
Ladling brass.
Brass
in his pockets.
Brass in his pockets, dribbling down the leg of his trousers. To fucking making a hoover for the moon.
A hoover for the moon, Tom.
Show me a greater story than that.
They've hoovered the moon. And I wanted to hate this, Tom. I wanted to be a smart arse about this and go, that's Americans for you. They wouldn't just like sweep a bit of moon dust into their hand and take it home in a plastic bag. No, they had to fucking commission Black & Decker to make the Dustbuster. But I suppose, like, if you're wearing a spacesuit and it's got delicate equipment and shit like that, you don't want to just be like panhandling dirt up off the ground, right?
It's gonna, fly off into the air and fucking into
right.
Your
you want
face mask. You want it to get straight in the bag.
Another instance where NASA are ahead of me, Tom.
Damn! If for the audio listeners, Gerry is shaking his fist to the sky right now to the space station.
NASA.
When I used to, have pride in the inside of my car, which quickly diminishes upon children arriving into the.
Yeah.
I still have it. I still have the Dustbuster, the Black & Decker Dustbuster. It's an absolute dinger of a yoke. It's the best one, Mini Hoover for the inside of the car. It's the best one. There is no. I've had others, ones that
Except no substitute.
It really, you can't. Not when it comes to the dustbuster for inside the car. My wife one Christmas desperately wanted a dustbuster. I was, but there's old Dyson ones and everything. I don't want. I want a dustbuster. I don't actually know what she wanted to Hoover with it, but she got one. She was delighted. Delighted.
Of course she was. There you go.
Good enough for Moon Rocks. Good enough for the wife.
That was Stanley and Black & Decker, Tom. Now, I want to say to the listeners before we go on here that our long list of people that we wanted to talk about was indeed a long list. But after we got talking about Black & Decker and Stanley, we realized that if we wanted to do everybody, this would be a 9-hour podcast, and we're not there just yet.
It would be the entire... We'd just become a tools podcast. Like, literally,
yeah.
If you looked over into your tool bag or toolbox right now, there's got to be a dozen items in there, and there's a story behind every single one of them.
So rather than do deep dives on them all, here's a couple, and we've saved a couple for maybe a second episode down the line. You never know. But here's a couple of just like a quick couple of little bonus toolbox heroes for you, Tom, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The Phillips head screw, Tom, or the cross-headed screw as we would know it. Tom, listeners, if you can hear the sound of my voice, look around you. If you can see a screw in your vicinity and it's got a cross head in it or an improvement thereof, such as the more recent posi drive screw, well, then that is a Phillips head screw. Phillips head screw. Open the clip at the back of your remote control and take the batteries out. What's holding the whole thing together? A Phillips head screw. Yeah. What's holding your hinges up? Phillips head screw. What's holding your TV on the wall? Phillips head screws. And Phillips head screws owe their name to Henry F. Phillips, born in 1889 in Oregon. 1889. I mean, like, he's later than the rest of the guys. I mean, like, Stanley was using hinges way, way back before this, so they were all straight heads. But Phillips, as we discussed earlier, he didn't necessarily invent these screws, but he was the man that brought them to the mass market, okay? The Phillips head screw was actually invented by a chap called John P. Thompson. And, the reason why we don't call them Thompson-headed screws is because Thompson, as we said before with Stanley, he was a good guy. He engineered this screw in 1932. He didn't have the money to get it out to the market. Phillips came along, said, hey, I got a whole bunch of money, say, and I quite like the look of those screws you got over there. Have you got a screwdriver to drive those screws? You do? All right, okay, let's go. Let's get them sold. And why in 1932 was there a pressing need to switch from straight-headed screws to star-headed screws, Tom? I'll tell you that now. It was in response to automated engineering. When you had automated engineering, the whoop, 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 it moved too quick for the standard straight-head screw. And the straight head screw had to be in the same orientation as the screw head it was going into.
Yes, it would never find it.
Screw, it would never find it.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's fucking vexing, Tom, when you're going with a straight head screw and you just can't.
Oh, like there was, you'll still see the straight head screws on some things like Bakelite projects or Bakelite items, like, as we talked in our housing show, where it was, you'll see sockets on the wall. A lot of the time, they'll just be flat heads on it because it ain't going anywhere. It's sunken. It ain't, your screw head, your screwdriver is going to find it. Nobody's going to rush it. Old school lads would actually, regardless of Phillips head or flathead, it'd kill them not to have them all in the same orientation around the house, 90 degrees. Yeah. 90 degrees. They'd all have them bang on. But listen, I have a scar. Now, it won't show up there, but I have a scar there from a flathead screwdriver jar because I was trying to hold that fucking thing, and the next thing it slipped and went sideways and just dug into my fucking hand.
Donk.
Never happened with a Phillips head. Never.
I mean, like, even if you talk about the assembly line that we were talking about there, if you think about a straight head, the time you're going to be is like find the bite, screw it, find it, screw it, find it, screw it. But with a star-headed screwdriver, it was just like screw, bang, 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 get it up. So Thompson, our man John P. Thompson, he was clever enough to invent the screw, but as we said before, he didn't have the contacts or means to sell it. But Phillips didn't have any problems. He fucking was well in. He sold it to General Motors in 1936, and in less than 4 years, Tom, every big manufacturer, more or less in America, had switched from straight head screws to Phillips head screws. It became the world standard in under 4 years.
The only thing I will say is that if you're talking for finishing work, like, you're getting, I suppose, joiners, they kind of look down their nose a little bit at Phillips head screws. You know, if it's the finish screw that you end up seeing on the job, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's a feature. So say like tasty hinges that'll be on that door behind you on your shed.
Yeah.
If you have a Phillips head on display, you'll often find, fuck, I want to cap that. I want to put a cap on that because it's not great to look at. Do you know, I think what it is the everyman, Ger, can handle a Phillips head screw. It takes a joiner to confidently put away a flathead screw. And I think that's where people look down it's a bit hipster. I know that's what it is. It's fucking hipster.
Tom, it's, you've just proven a point here, Tom. You can be hipster about anything. Even screws.
Punching down, you're a fucking hipster. Oh, really? So you use the one that everybody uses because it's just easier to use it? When did that ever get anything done?
If you want to be really hipster, Tom, we're going to move on to the Robertson screw, which is not very common in Ireland whatsoever. That is the square tip screw, which I don't believe I've seen more than 5 of these things in the wild in my fucking life. But if you want to know where it comes from, it owes its name to P.L. Robertson, a Canadian chap born in 1879, and he went on to invent the Robertson head screw and screwdriver. Very good design, good screw, didn't have the seating issues that you had with straight heads. Nothing wrong with a Robertson head screw, Tom, just not as popular.
I took a habit of when I take a thing apart, or when you get an item and there's always a couple of screws left over.
Yes.
I have a box and it's all the bitty screws, and it's proved it's proved handy. I need a really tiny screw here and I need an odd shape, and I fuck knows where, Ger. I cannot remember where it came out of or at what time period I ended up with this, but 2 of those screws, those square-headed out Canadian screws, the Robertsons, 2 of them are there, and and weirdly every bit set you get with, it'll have a couple of little square
would have
heads.
A screw, yeah. And you'd never use it ever in your life.
Never use that fucking thing. The twain have not met because I found no reason to go, I need to take out my usual Phillips head, put in my square head, get my Robertson, put it in here. I found no need. I mean, for all the world, Robertson, fair play to you and all the rest of it, but let's be honest, the Phillips head.
Yeah, it's the 8-track tapes of screws.
Do you know what it is? It's the fucking Blu-ray. Sure, it's the Blu-ray, because it just passed everybody by and just went, well, we don't need that fucking thing. Even an 8-track at a time had a, they had a time when they were needed.
I'll tell you what, I'll tell you a better one what it is, Tom. It's not even the Blu-ray, it is the HD DVD. Of screws. It's the fucking laser disc of screws.
Yeah.
It's like, appreciate it, nothing wrong with it, but you know what, this one I have over here is just fine, and I have a screwdriver and I'm not buying another one.
Yeah. Hey, who knows? Maybe they're big in some Canadian outpost somewhere in the world that we just don't know about. Maybe it's the only one they're using.
Maybe there's some American people listening to this that are spitting out their coffee going like, oh my God, you telling me they don't have Robertson head screws in Ireland? What the fuck? Like when they discover chicken fillet rolls and it blows their mind.
Some things can pass nations by. The Americans still think it's amazing for years that, they not a lot of places use dishwashers in America. They fucking wash their dishes still to this day in the evening time. And a lot of fucking places are like, what is that about? Or the
same people have garbage disposals in their house where you throw stuff up and it mulches it all up.
I can never hear the word garbage disposal without thinking of the Flintstones movie where they kept a little pig underneath the counter.
So listen, Tom, we're getting away from ourselves here, but we want to drop you one more real quick one here before we move on with the show. And we're going to stay in the screw family for this one. We couldn't do a podcast about famous people and their famous tools without mentioning the Allen key.
Of course. It's the gift that keeps on giving,
I mean, like, and as I said before with Black & Decker, you would be forgiven for, looking at an Allen key and thinking of it like a Hoover. Yeah, Hoovers. What are you talking about? An Allen key is a key that Allens.
Yeah.
Allen is the motion.
Allen.
I need to Allen a thing together. No, you gotta pull it together. It's an Allen key, or as it was known, because this one here, Tom, is a little bit chicken and egg. What came first, the Allen key, or the screw that needed an Allen key?
Yeah, which is almost like, it's like the hex head. Yeah, I get you.
It's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is, because hex-headed bolts and screws were patented way back in the 1850s. So before there was our Allen keys, there must have been tools designed to drive and remove them. Okay, it wasn't that they had hex-head screws and they were putting them in with their teeth. But the design for the hex-headed screw insertion and removal soared thanks to a guy called William G. Allen.
Oh, yeah.
Born in 1861. And he said that, okay, we're going to take the hex-headed design and screws and we're going to use them for a screw that finishes flush on machinery such as lathes, tower drills that we talked about. Because they could not use straight-headed screws at the time because it was a safety innovation. You know, if you've got a screw, that means the head of it is proud, and that means if the head of it is proud, it could catch your clothing, and you do not want your clothing caught on a fucking lathe, Tom. You ever do metal work in school? You ever hear those stories?
Oh yeah, lads getting fucking arms lost. I'm just going to briefly explain to people because you know exactly what you're talking about. There will be a mushroom head to take the slice that is the flat head. For an Allen key, the hole is recessed down into the actual screw, so no head need to be above the metal body of the. I went Fred.
You went Fred? It's hard not to. Would we go so far as to call? Would we go so far as to call this a set screw, Tom? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Did I remember that bit of metal work right? Yeah.
Also, you can get a serious wind on an Allen. Like you want this thing tightened home, so it ain't coming loose. If you're using like a French press that's banging up and down all day, you can't have it backing out. So if all you're using is, manpower, i.e. to get a crank, you can get no torque on a twist. But if you've got an Allen key stuck in there, you can stick a pipe down the end of that and crank that fucker till it bleeds. So,
I mean, all I can say to explain it to the listeners here who we may have lost many hours ago, Tom, but I'm pretty sure everybody here has been walking around their house and caught their jumper on a screw that was sticking out.
Yes.
But you've never fucking caught your jumper on an Allen-headed screw, because that son of a bitch is a little grub screw or a little set screw, and that's been buried into the wall.
That's a really good explanation. Yeah, exactly. Brilliant idea.
So old William G. Allen there, he had the screw. It was a success, but if you have a screw that is a success, you need a tool to use on it, and henceforth came the Allen key, or sometimes known as the Allen wrench. Now, technically, they were hex wrenches and hex keys, and these had been around for a long time. The set of hex keys on a little key ring.
I need to stop you as a point of just question. Did you get that T27 you were looking for that time?
Oh, I did. Yeah. Right. The Torx one. Yeah, I was T25.
Was it T25? Because I knew I had one, so I was going to send it up to you. Anyway,
no, I bought a half dozen of them. I'll never need another one again, and I have no job for it.
And they'll be minded too, I bet you. They'll be fucking minded.
No, they're not. I'm just fucking them around the place. I'm giving them out to kids to play with. I have no use for them. So, like I said, there had been hex keys and wrenches before, but just as there had been knives before the Stanley knife came along and became a catch-all term for utility knives. So did the Allen key become what most people knew the tool by.
And do you know the oddball drawer in the kitchen that has it? Yeah. Well, you tidied your one up, actually. It was brilliant during lockdown. You did a brilliant tidy up of your one. You've actually boxed everything away. Did it stay tidy?
No, it needs another one badly.
But I can guarantee you, everybody, if they went rooting in between like the sellotape, the 90% missing sellotape, the old scissors, couple of fucking Sharpies that have dried out, and an old stapler, and maybe there might be birthday fucking candles. Yeah. There will be at least 9 various cheaply made Allen keys, because a certain company has employed these in their every fucking package.
And I have to say, I mean, we're talking IKEA. We're going to put them on blast here. I love IKEA. I won't hear a bad word said about it. And I want to say one thing that I only learned recently that everybody's probably screaming at the podcast here. The Allen keys that come in IKEA, in the bag of little fixings that you get with IKEA to screw together your stuff, you might notice from time to time that there's a black piece of plastic around about 4 inches long that you never really know what it's for. And you're like, I'm going to fuck this thing out. I don't know what it is. Is it like a bit for the back of the whatever? That's a holder for your Allen key. You slide your Allen key down into it, and it makes it so much more comfortable to grip. And you're like, for 10 years, I've been having this one bit of metal and it's been cutting the hand of me as I'm like, cranking it. They give you a little fucking extension handle with it, Tom. How many of them have you thrown out?
Lots. I'll be honest, anything from IKEA I've ever made, and I shouldn't do it, but I would refuse to use their Allen key. I'm just a wanker. I go get the screw gun.
Like,
I go get the screw gun, get in a fucking hex head in the fucking thing.
Get the 5x60s on it.
I'm tightening that cunt home. It ain't fucking breaking up by the time I'm done. Like, it's just getting a crank. I'll put it on, and I'll put it on screw mode so that at least the clutch kicks in. I won't actually put it on drill mode or hammer.
Yeah, you won't bury it. Yeah,
so it rips through the other side. But that is great to know. That's table quiz stuff. I would bet you everybody listening to this had no idea that was a little mini handle.
There you go.
On it.
What's this for? We'll throw a picture of it up, just put on the socials so you can see what we're talking about. But regardless, there you go, people. The Allen key.
The Allen key. Everybody has some Allen keys. Brilliant.
You got Allen keys everywhere. All right. Brilliant. So now we're going to wrap it up with one more. Those were little tasters that we dotted in here and there, and there's a dozen more of those that we might throw into another podcast down the way. But for now, we're going to wrap up today's show with a story behind one more brand that everybody should be familiar with, whether you've sanded, sawed, drilled, strimmed, or mowed. Tom, a company called Bosch.
Yes.
Yeah. The company that makes all those distinctive dark green power tools and lawnmowers and strimmers, and indeed washing machines and what the fuck else, owes their name to a chap called Robert Bosch, born in Germany in 1861, who served his time as a precision mechanic after leaving school, leading to years of work not just in his native Germany, but elsewhere, such as the UK and the USA as well. Served his time. Have you served your time, Tom?
I did, I suppose, in that when you come out of college as an engineer, you're a junior engineer. And you do have to send your time. And really, you should be at least 2 to 3 years as a junior. But I kind of got moved up a bit too quick in hindsight. My hair went grey overnight and I became senior engineer after a year and a half, and then had 11 juniors under me. It was the most bizarre moment. But really, everything went mad during the boom. I shouldn't have been.
Well, I was just about to say, look at the time that it was, Tom.
Yeah, my grandfather served his time as a precision engineer, and it was like fucking... You went through, like, I saw some of his notebooks. They were like fucking work of art, these notebooks. Like, and you had to. There was no, I think I'm gonna just jump the queue. There was just no jump in the queue. It was just
and honestly, even just the notice, the notion of apprenticeships and things like this, Tom. I mean, it really is old school Star Wars Padawan. Take you under my wing.
It really is,
because there's a lot of things here that you can't learn in a classroom. So you're going to have to go out and work and do it and learn on the fly. But at the same time, it's not just you know what, pick that up and keep swinging. And there are people like Fred, for example, Fred Dibner. We hate to keep going back to the guy who never served his time, at least not at the work that he ended up doing. He just went out and fucking did it, and more power to them. But like, there are, I hate to say it, Fred, better ways to fucking do it.
There are, and I tell you something I've noticed down through the years, and I was blessed and cursed in one way. If you have a mentor who has your best interests at heart and also is very good at teaching you how to carry yourself on the job, rather than just going, right, I'll fucking sign this. Well, I'm just, you've been here for fucking 4 years, fine it. If you can have a mentor that will actually show you out the other end how to fucking walk like a qualified person, how to talk, and how to actually behave and professionally. I was very lucky. He was a complete fucking psychopath, and I was terrified of the man, as was everybody on the site. But his words were, I'm going to teach you how to run this site. And we're talking 450 men on the job. You know, so I was very lucky to have gotten that mentor. To this day, I still carry Ger, tricks, and not tricks, maybe methods that man taught me on how to carry yourself into situations, because serving my time under him, he was a fucking very strong human, if you know what I mean. And those were that for me was serving my time. I probably got it, it sped up far too quickly, but at the same time, what I got in that year and a half, 2 years under him, realistically, it was another fella wouldn't get 10 years worth of that learning, that kind of way.
There you go. And it's hard at the time, like, when you're a young man and all that kind of thing, it's like, well, I don't want to serve my time because it sounds an awful lot like school. and I'll be qualified in 2-3 years. Damn it, I can work now, just doing something, anything, some money grabbing sort of thing. So it's hard, but there you go. And if you wanna, hey Tom, let's get back on track. If you want a good reason why you should serve your time, we're going to give you our man Robert Bosch here. So after serving his time and working in the UK and the USA, he landed back to Germany with a whole pile of knowledge and a whole pile of experience. Enough, in fact, to open the Workshop for Precision Mechanics and Electrical Engineering in 1886. Here's again, if you want to know what a business does, just put it on a fucking sign.
I fucking love it. I love it how on the nose it is. There's
Yeah. At the time, it was like, what are you going to call that? What are you going to call the company? How about Bosch Company? No, I'm going to call it the Workshop for Precision Mechanics and Electrical Engineering.
What was the one you talked about the last day about Hellboy? Where did he work?
Oh yeah, the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Development.
I keep on referencing my late grandfather, but the man did so many balls of things. He named his workshop BMW. Because at the time BMW they weren't coming around fucking going, hey, you can't be calling yourself BMW. The name of the town he was in was Ballylanders. He called it Ballylanders Motorworks.
Brilliant.
Because he didn't give a fuck. He knew it would get people's heads turned as if it was going to be Bavarian Motorworks. Like he just went, I'm small biscuits over here. I'm small biscuits over here. But who got all the work? The guy with BMW.
Well, going back to another famous German, our man Robert Bosch at the WPMWE, he just didn't go back and sit down and get a few contracts here and there. No, I mean, he was workshopping precision mechanics and electrical engineering. This is 1886. He said, what do people need? Let's have a look. So Robert Bosch, the same Robert Bosch whose name is on the side of your lawnmower, said, okay, here we go. And he invented the actual fucking spark plug.
Best spark plugs. I mean, people will argue this with me. But in my opinion, if they go well in a Ferrari, which they do, they're the ones to go in a Ferrari. They're the best fucking spark plugs. They're all the spark plugs in any car, any petrol car I've ever had, because you'll always run better with Bosch. My battery in the car right now, it's Bosch.
This is it.
A handful of things. They even make the best wipers these days. Do you know what I mean?
Well, we're gonna get into that, but like Bosch around about the time when his spark plugs hit it big. It's not that spark plugs. This is what we're talking about back in the day. This wasn't a place where he says, "Hey, let's build a better spark plug." No, he said, "Let's build a spark plug." These engines and all this kind of crack, Tom. And I'm not even going to pretend to know the actual inner workings of an engine, but I know it needs a fucking spark plug.
I can't actually wrap my head around, unless it was like the diesel compression thing that was happening before then, because he must have been in cahoots at the top. He must, like, that's the innovation that's the spark plug. It keeps on giving spark to basically fire the little combustion chambers that fire the fucking fuel. That's literally saying, well, I see what you're doing there. Do you mind if I just make it way fucking better? Like,
do you mind if I just turn the automotive industry on its complete fucking head?
Holy shit! I had no idea that he invented it. That's incredible.
There you go. And it has to be said as well, Tom. Not only did he invent it, he invented the spark plug while looking like an absolute badass. I gotta put a picture of 27-year-old Robert Bosch up on our socials, because for whatever reason, this 27-year-old German Poindexter is rocking a cowboy hat. He's rocking like a Confederate soldier's. What would you even call that, Tom? What do you call
kind of like a fedora, isn't it? And the beard.
Oh, the fedora is one thing, but the tunic that he's wearing, I guess you want to call it, is the one that sort of comes across like a Yankee soldier and buttons down one side.
Yes,
but it comes straight across his.
Oh, what is that called? There's a name for that.
Called?
Because, like, ringmasters ended up taking him on as well, and then you see a lot of like the burlesque take him on as well. That quintessential military.
If you could imagine like a Western military version of the Sergeant Pepper's outfits, but just completely fucking badass, and he's got a beard down to his chest.
I mean, he must have taken it back from America, mustn't he? He must have shown back up.
He must have done,
because he showed back up in Germany. He would have been, hey, what's happening, guys? I mean, he would have been cool, probably dropping in Americanisms. What is happening, dude? You're like, what is dude? I don't understand. You're like, oh, you're so European. Dude is like the coolest thing. Oh my God, you're saying cool, like cold? Like, no, cool means like cool, man. Like he would
Yeah.
Not able to jive with any of these turkeys at all when he
Yeah.
comes back.
Fucking, you all need to hang 10. Like, I'm going to put a picture of this guy up on our
He's
socials. And I
class. Look,
dare
and
anybody
even an owl fella too, he looks like he definitely invented shit. Just
Yeah.
a cool looking
Honestly,
son of a bitch.
I can't wait for you guys to take a look at this guy and just look at it and say to yourself, is this the man that invented spark plugs, or is this the guy that was chasing down the outlaw Josie Wales? Like, it's it's just fucking mental. Look. Dude could have fucking invented the spark plug and pissed off and ate Black Forest Gatto for the rest of his fucking life. But instead, what he did was just take the ball and run. Bosch was now in business in a big way. He and not just in the German automotive industry, Tom, because once you have spark plugs, everybody fucking wants them. And Bosch said, what else do cars need? So he made and innovated things such as windscreen wipers, car radios. These are all new innovations at the time. Headlights, Tom. I mean, like, he didn't invent the headlight, but he made the best damn headlight at the time. And as you said with the spark plugs, everybody wanted headlights. So there you go. He's churning shit out. And when the automotive industry began to struggle during the Depression and all that, Bosch said, fuck it, okay. Turned around to his inventors, to a chap called Hermann Steinhardt. Again, Bosch is well up there. He's not tinkering in his garage in the evenings, okay? He's got a big R&D team underneath him with guys like Hermann Steinhardt. Said, hey, Steinhardt, I've got an assembly line. I've got workers. I've got a whole bunch of materials. What have you got for me? Steinhardt said, okay, no problem. There's this guy that we're after hiring in here, a guy called Ernst Eismann. You know what he's invented, Tom? He's invented a hair trimmer. You could fucking use it, Bosch. Get that fucking Confederate beard off yourself. But regardless of which, we've got a little trimmer. Eismann, get your ass up here. Show us the trimmer you have. Oh, well, I have this little trimmer. Here we go. I said, all right, I like it. Let's make it. So now Bosch has parlayed himself away from the automotive industry into distributing hair trimmers, Tom. The hair trimmers, the little hair trimmers, like what you and I would get your well, both of us haven't had a haircut in a while, Tom, but what we would get trimmed with, the little trims that you trim your beard with, the clippers that a barber has in his hands, the electrical clippers that a barber has in his hands, they're innovations of Bosch back in the day.
Fucking genius. Cars might need a headlight for fucking 2 years. They might need a battery for 10 years.
Exactly.
But fucking pricks need their beards and hair trimmed technically every week. That's fucking thinking, man.
And it's not like he turned around and started making ice cream, Tom. You know, he's got this gang of people. He's in the motor industry. Okay, everybody, think. Put your heads down. What doesn't have a motor that could use a motor? Well, instead of using scissors, what if you had like loads of little scissors and it was run off a motor? How would that work? Well, you just flick a switch and bzzz. I love it.
Have you ever had your hair clipped with a hand clippers?
No, but I've seen one of them.
My grandfather did it to me. My other grandfather, he cut all my uncles. They all had a tight fucking fade on the side, like killer fade. But we're talking down to the fucking metal. And he was giving out that I landed up one time. He's like, Jesus Christ, he's like a girl or something. I had a bit of hair, and my mother was out picking strawberries or something, or she was not inside the property. Down there, like, goodbye. He starts, and this thing could have done with a bit of an edging. Could have been sent to a saw doctor, because it just pulled a
squirt of oil.
It just pulled. Oh, there was loads of oil, but the problem was it just pulled hair out from the follicles. I mean, to this day, I can feel that fucking pain. Tight haircut.
I will tell you where I encountered it. I encountered that clippers in the Gaeltacht in 1995 when I was in the Gaeltacht in the house we were staying in. There was a bunch of lads in the house, 12 lads in the house. And one of the lads found a pair of these clippers. And one of the other lads said, you know what? I want a haircut. I want to shave my head. It'll be cool to rock up to the Cayley with a shaved head. It'll be out there.
Yes.
And the lad said, fair enough. I'll do it for you. And he shaved half his head with the clippers until the kid could not take the pain of it anymore. And then it was one of the rare situations where the kigger is the moonshowers, the fucking Irish speakers, the head honchos. You were never to speak English at any stage, but they rocked around, and he was there trying to explain in broken Irish what's going on. Agus nish, Tá méid ag dulgadí an Cayley, agus bhhaitlam an Colleen, agus tá magruige row more, and the man says, just tell me in English. To calm shaving our heads, and then they had to fucking get it done from, because they couldn't let him out like it. That's where I've invented those clippers. But if they'd had Ernst Eismann's wee fucking clippers going, and all it was, Tom, hey, that's what it was. Bosch all of a sudden was in the consumer electrics brand. He had cornered automotive, he'd cornered consumer electrics. And it's a very small step when you look at hair trimmers that are a motor and a switch. When all is said and done, they're a motor and a switch, Tom. It's a very small step from hair trimmers to drills, grinders, sanders, electric screwdrivers, all these other things. And the money just kept rolling in. Nobody invents things, Tom. You just build and borrow on the patents and distributes, and there you go.
Look at even some of the computer makers today. Like, they're not inventing the computer. What they're doing is just going, I see your computer over there, and I raise you a computer. You know, so it just ends up being the same fucking thing. You're 100% right. The JML effect. Bring it to me. Bring it to me. Come on. We got all these smart people here. What's already here? What's already on the market? What's already there? Oh, hair trimmer. You got to break your hand and pull the head off somebody. Let's put a motor on that and see how it goes. Does it go back and forth any faster? I mean, the first testers must have been interesting too, Jared, in all fairness. That's the one I would have liked to see. Oh, Jesus Christ, the devil is inside my head. You know, it would have been a bit terrifying the first, because that's, you know, it's one thing to test a fucking wiper blade. It's a different story to stand there, we give you a haircut with this brand new thing that's never been invented before.
It worked, and there you are. And that's how it was for Robert Bosch. His company became one of Germany's leading businesses, the biggest company in Germany, just nothing but net, keeping on innovating, keeping on releasing new products. They were just completely sailing through victory. World War II started, blah, blah, blah. And then in 1942, Robert Bosch passed away at the age of 80 from complications arising from an ear infection. And that's the story of Bosch, and we don't really need to say a whole pile of stuff.
Okay, I'm going to get you to pump the brakes there a small bit, Jer. Probably the brake pads were either made by fucking Brembo or... I'm just curious. I won't lie. I was looking at the timing of the timeline and date as it was coming up along, and this guy was getting better and better, and he just happened to be in a certain country that needed a bit of innovation at the time. I don't know, was it by accident, or did you not find it in any way fucking interesting to mention World War II? Because Bosch is still around, curiously. They didn't capitulate. What happened there, Jer, if you don't mind?
The podcast was rolling on, Tom. I thought maybe we'd just wrap it up. And
we might just just open the bag for a second, have a little look in, if you wouldn't mind.
We'll dip our tone.
Okay.
We're going to dip our tongue. Okay. Tom, there's no getting around it. Robert Bosch himself was a lifelong pacifist and a total bleeding heart liberal. But the rise of the National Socialist early 30s meant his hand was forced into rowing in and helping with the war effort. And Tom, when we do say the National Socialist Party, we do have to call them what they actually are, the fucking Nazis.
Yeah. Yeah, I know people that start with, oh, well, it was just brown shirts. Nazis, lads. Fairly bad intentions, like.
Nazis. And Bosch has to, like, when I say he was a lifelong pacifist and all that, like, he was a founding member of an anti-Semitism league in the 1920s. Back in 1906, when he was hitting it big, he was the first person in Germany to introduce the 8-hour working day. Like, he was a socially committed entrepreneur. Like, everything was, look, let's get some money into the people's hands. Let's get fair play. Let's train these people up. You know, he wasn't one of these cigar chewing fat cats like you'd see in America. It's just like, let's work these fucking people to a bone. He didn't have 8-year-old Alonzo Decker ladling brass in his factories. Well, not just yet.
I like bands back in the 90s that I'd be a bit cringy about now. Maybe he, when he thinking back, maybe he was, just got caught up in the whole thing. Because in fairness,
well, he did. He did, and we're gonna get into it, how caught up he did. He managed to basically get through World War I without committing too much to the war effort of Germany in World War I. Wasn't his bag kind of thing, but the Nazis were a different kettle of fish, Tom. And they considered Bosch, his factories, and his staff to be essential to the Third Reich war movement. Indeed, their words, I believe, Tom, were crucial to armaments production. So Bosch, fearing for his life, his company, his life's work, and his family, not for nothing, acquiesced and took on with armaments contracts, with work taking place first at 2 shadow factories, as they were called. But as the war kicked off and rolled on, eventually most Bosch plants were working on keeping German planes in the sky and German tanks on the roll.
I love my child brain went shadow factories. God damn it, these shadows won't make themselves, people. Get down.
Yeah, I mean, like from the research I've done, it really was a case of, look, I'm not turning over all production. What do you got? You got a little war going on. You guys seem to be arming up a little bit. Well, I'm going to stay over here making windscreen wipers for export. But okay, I've my hand is forced, and you do have a Luger pointed at my fucking family, so. A metaphorical Luger pointed at my metaphorical family, it must be said. They said, okay, 2 shadow factories off the books that are doing work for us. But, as the war rolled on, basically, it's like, okay, you don't need to be making anything except spark plugs for our tank. Basically, towards the end of the war, every German tank on the field of battle started with a Bosch component.
I mean, you can look at this a bunch of ways, and you can, given in hindsight, the situation, you go, how dare you? That's disgusting. Either to shit or bust. It's do one or the other. The other side, you're kind of going, well, let's say I've got 10,000 employees. Do I turn my back and go, well, they're all going, they're just going to take my fucking factory over and do this anyway. So Christ and Christ above, I may as well stick around. And if I don't, they're going to blow my fucking head off. Would you stood your ground and have the moral high ground here? There's no moral high ground to be gotten when, the SS officers come through and goes, show us your papers. It's...
I mean, like, we're going to get into it, and we're going to lay it out a wee bit, and we're just going to put it all out in Front Street, whatever you think about it or not. Is it nobler to fucking die and get it over? Are you doing better just kind of sticking around? We're going to give you all the information that our research has given us about Robert Bosch and how he handled himself in the war, and you can sort it out. And as around about now, I say to myself, Tom, you know what? We walked ourselves into this discussing Bosch in this end segment. We could have instead done a story on Musaburo Makita over in Japan and let everyone know how he put his name on a fucking sander.
Japan, we're in the middle of it too. But there was, you can go through and find a list.
I forgot about that, Tom. Yeah, I guess Makita was fucking putting components in kamikaze airplanes and things as well. And there was nothing you could do in the war.
Can I point? Can I show you this box for here right now? It's a Makita skill saw that I've had, and it's an absolutely fantastic piece of kit. I'm
still going strong.
It's just, I'm just saying, there's points, like, if you were a fucking bread maker back then, you're going to be making, for whatever side you're on, you're going to be making shit for the war movement, regardless. There was people from the war movement for the Allies, will say, making shit too, who would have went, I don't want any fucking part of this. Where the Allies went, you're fucking a part of this.
Yeah. Or, hey, Walt, we want you.
So there was points where, either way it could have gone.
This is war, okay, Tom? So people can say, hey, you know what? Tell you what you do. Just refuse to work with the Nazis. Point blank. Fuck no, I'm not going to work with the Nazis. And that was absolutely an option. Don't get me wrong. There was a French aero company ran by a man called Marcel Dassault at the time. He built planes for the French army until the Nazis rolled into Paris, and the French army became, not in need of as many planes as they were, shall we say. They said, all right, listen, Mr. Dassault, we need you to make planes for us, the German army. He said, fuck no, I'm not building any Nazi planes. And they said, hey, man, that's cool. That's no problem. Don't worry about it. They fucked him into Buchenwald concentration camp, and he stayed there until liberation at 1945. And liberation was what saved him. It wasn't like the Germans said, stay in there for a little while until you soften your cough. Intention was go in there and die.
I mean, so there you go. That's pretty much your option. I mean, lucky enough that he actually got the concentration camp and not a bullet to the fucking side of the head. But I'm just trying to put myself in their position. Like, you could, like, classic French, like, the whole country, the English would say they rolled over, surrender monkeys or whatever. Like, but at the same time, classic French, no, I will not make planes. No. It's like, really? You won't make our planes? Get in the camp.
And here's the thing, Tom. We hear to this day, like, those companies like Hugo Boss and such like that made uniforms for the Nazis and all that. But there seems to have been a couple of different schools of thought at the time. You had companies like Dassault that said, fuck no, and all of a sudden there was no companies like Dassault. You had people who were, hey, the Nazi money train, let's jump on board. Cha-ching, I see nothing but net here. And then you have ones that joined reluctantly, and Bosch appears to have been in that camp.
It would seem
So
so. Yeah, he seemed like a good egg. Especially to his workers, he seemed like a bloody good egg. One of the few people, as you said, that introduced the 8-hour working day. That shit
yeah.
was not happening.
So here we are. This is the thing, Tom. If you're in Germany in World War II, the thing with making shit for the Nazis is that, without a shadow of a doubt, it's the wrong thing to do. It's a fucking reprehensible thing for your company to do. But, some companies were like, hey, turn a blind eye to it, because humans, as we know, can be shitheads at time.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if you look at it, what it was at the time, as we look at it back now, it's, hey, work for the Nazis. But back then it's, hey, would you like a huge government contract with a blank check budget? Combine that with the fact that the Nazis are also supplying labor to your factories of the slave variety. That meant companies just literally made money at a rate they would have never dreamt about, Tom. But while some companies said, fuck it, yeah, by all means, count us in. Robert Bosch seems, from our research, to have been absolutely heartbroken and aghast at what was going on. So, with that being said, it's one thing for a big industrialist like Robert Bosch to be heartbroken and aghast at what's going on. We do have to point out that while he's heartbroken and aghast, there are some 20,000 men, women, and children as young as 10 forced to work against their will to work at Bosch plants cranking out spark plugs and headlights, and as the war rolled on, Tom, even camouflage.
It can be killing you, but at the same time, I would imagine a very smart man like him. He didn't strike me as money hungry when I was reading into him. As per, like, L'Oreal had no problem in rolling over. You know what I mean? And L'Oreal were French. L'Oreal is still on the fucking go today, like, and they had a lot of products.
All these companies are still on the go. Don't get me wrong.
Krispy Kreme, the place where people queue around the corner, was part of the company that jumped in with both feet, and people queue around the corner for that shit like a crack in a fucking roundy fucking doughy ball. There was plenty of them that did it. It comes down to what was being put on the table at the time.
There's a website that I read up there, that Google Translate from German into English is just a wonderful tool that they brought to the internet, and it's testimonies of, I was a 13-year-old girl, and I was, Alonzo G. Decker wasn't the only kid ladling brass, so we had kids ladling brass, pressing things, pressing armaments, horrible conditions, slave labor, Tom. If you died, there was another person to take your place. Horrendous forced labor. And, Bosch knew what was going on. Whether he was standing in his study with a tear in his eye looking out over the field or anything like that, we got to say that, yeah, he knew what was going on, and Bosch, the company, were kept in work by this shithead regime. But with all that being said, Robert Bosch was determined on two things. Number one, he had to help, and forced by the Third Reich or whatever, but he had to help as many Jews and persecuted people as he could by hiring them and protecting them, or helping to fund their emigrations and getting them the fuck out of the country. The other thing he was determined about was that this Hitler motherfucker had got to fucking go.
You're in a weird place if you are Robert right now, aren't you? Like, you're in a very weird place. These atrocities are going on, and you're going, fucking... Like, it's trying to turn this is trying to turn the fucking Titanic. You know what I mean? Trying to turn this situation around. It's not like you can just fucking fire a couple of people or, hey, make a fucking phone call. You're not making a phone call going, Mr. Hitler, this shit needs to fucking stop. I'm having no more fucking part of this shit. You got to be and pragmatic.
There's comparisons to be pulled on say the Oskar Schindler stories of the time, where industrialists that saved as many lives as they could by basically saying, look, I need X amount of people to work in this factory, and they need to be well treated, and they need to be XYZ, and I don't need you fucking hamming them up because I need good people to work in this, and hiring them and protecting them that way. And, as Bosch was apparently doing here, helping getting a few people out of the country, funding Jewish families to get the fuck out of the place. I mean, that's wonderful, Bosch. Thank you for your service. You've done a great act there. And if you read up on the Bosch website, this is why I bring this story to you, Tom, because where a lot of companies are kind of, the war, never heard of it. There is pages upon pages upon pages on the Bosch website itself that just lay all this out on Front Street. Now, I will say, Tom, I read an awful lot of the Bosch website, more than any man going this week, I would imagine. Don't mention the word Nazi a whole pile. They mention the National Socialist Party. So it's, okay, you're getting a bit of a kid glove treatment of it there. But when you have that, and then on another website you're looking at, you have testimony from survivors from, I hasten to call them Bosch's plants or his factories because they were labor camps.
Yeah.
It tells a different story. But Bosch, it has to be said, getting old, getting advanced in years, was trying his best to help as many people get the fuck out of here. And again, the second part of it, Tom, he had said, this Hitler guy has to fucking die. Bosch, like I said, a lifelong fucking bleeding heart liberal whose motto was, Tom, never forget your humanity and respect human dignity in your dealings with others. With all that being said, he fucking hated this little Austrian cunt. He mused out loud, that someone should, quote, just kill the guy. Now, in Nazi Germany, that's enough to get your head ventilated if you say it in front of the wrong person. But Bosch trusted a few people in his company with his thoughts, and they formed what became known as the Bosch Kreis, or Bosch Circle in our tongue. Now, while Robert Bosch himself died in 1942 from an aforementioned infection stemming from an ear problem that never got sorted, he didn't live to see it himself, but the Bosch Kreis that he formed were involved in the infamous July 20th, 1944 assassination attempt known as Operation Valkyrie, which just narrowly missed killing that little Austrian fuck with a briefcase bomb in his bunker.
How class is that? Like, you combine... Essentially, you just wrote a script for a prequel and sequel where you can involve both Liam Neeson and Tom Cruise, a one-eyed Tom Cruise, essentially. Where we, essentially, how cool would that be if that was the spin-off of Schindler's List?
Well, actually, you know, the movie Valkyrie starring Tom Cruise is actually part of the Schindler's List expanded universe.
Oh, excuse me. See, I don't know the lore. You're a nerd for this shit. You know about lore when it comes to movies and stuff like that.
Just as Guardians of the Galaxy is to Captain America,
which are absolutely comparable.
But the movie, if you've never seen it, and I've never seen it, but I know the story. Tom Cruise is in there with one arm and one eye. He plays like a German guy with an American accent. It's not a very good movie. But the plan was to plant a bomb in Hitler's bunker in a briefcase and fucking blow him up. And they blew up the bunker, and Hitler somehow survived. And he survived to such a miraculous degree, Tom, that they recreated on Mythbusters to see how the fuck he did it. Or was it just myth that he was in the bunker at the time to say, yes, not even a bomb can blow up the Fuhrer? But no, the briefcase that they put in exploded in such a way that if you were in a bunker with no room for expansion of the walls or some shit, I don't know. Watch the episode of Mythbusters. But while Tom Cruise's character was carrying bombs to and from the bunker to kill him, and indeed there were other assassination attempts. I believe they tried to get a bomb onto a plane to blow up in midair, but the timer wouldn't go off on it. No, here we are. The Bosch Kreis, they were involved in that, Tom, although it must be said in a very executive role, shall we call it. You know, none of them were, none of them I don't think were making bombs or handling things or handing it over to Tom Cruise to get it done. But they were in the kind of role where they were back up the way and very much approved of what was going on.
If you've given yourself the title, the Bosch Kreis, like the Bosch Circle, you're not dirty in your hands. We're not. People who form a circle as a group, you normally form a group first, a mob. But these lads went straight to fucking circle, Jared. They're passing that knowledge on.
This is not an Alakadu circle, down the clubhouse drinking pints and such like. These guys are involved in a plot to assassinate Hitler in Germany. And they're Germans. Like, this is fucking dangerous business. And after the plot failed and all belonging to it was found and shot and killed, so too did the eye swing round to the Bosch Kreis. And they were the members of the circle. There was like 6 or 8 of them. They were all captured. They were all kidnapped, and they were all for the fucking hop. It was only the fact that Robert Bosch was held in such high esteem by some of the leading German guys at the time that it saved members of the Bosch Kreis from execution. It was like, hey, you know what? You worked for Bosch. We have a lot of time for you. Thanks for all the spark plugs. So,
don't do that again.
Don't do that again. Have jail for a long time, but we're not going to kill you. But there was one guy, a senior Bosch employee called Karl Friedrich Girdler, who acted as the go-between from the Bosch Kreis to the resistance within the German military. So he was the guy getting his hands dirty. He got fucking killed.
Yeah,
he got
yeah. I mean, yeah.
Clearly,
clearly that's not what the power didn't lie with Karl.
Didn't extend. Somebody had to go, but by all means, we had Bosch executives in the war working on killing Hitler and damn near succeeding. But Robert Bosch wasn't around at that stage. That was July 20th, 1944, when the assassination attempt took place. As we said, back up the way, Robert Bosch died in 1942. And to add salt to the wounds, the Nazis gave him a full state funeral, thanking him for his service. And anybody close to Bosch said he would have motherfucking hated that. If he hated anything, like he hated the fact that back up the way he'd been awarded the prestigious Pioneer of Labor honor by the Nazis during the war, which again is like, oh, here's Robert Bosch, Pioneer of Labor, Hitler's Pioneer of Labor. You know, he was like, nah, don't call me that. Don't call me that. I don't want that.
It's dirt, isn't it?
It's dirt. What I'm going to say as well is, Tom, I got quite a bit of this off the Bosch website, so there may be the German doth protest too much on this one, but still.
To be fair, the reason why you wouldn't have read Nazi too, it's such a trigger word right now too, and it's been diluted. So, but like, you know, if you don't like a certain type of chewing gum in certain parts of America now, you're a Nazi. You're like, whoa, Jesus Christ! Not that you know. If you're a Nazi, you're a Nazi, but they were a fucking separate thing all on their own. So I mean,
they were capital N little Z Nazis, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And as we said, Tom, but you could turn around and say such and such a company worked with the Nazis, and such a company worked with the Nazis. Some of them don't appear to have owned up for things the way that Bosch do. They've fessed up, shall we say, a little more than other companies who were in bed with Nazis at the time. In actual fact, in 1999, I don't know what the holdup was there for 50 years, but in 1999, they committed to a program of reparations to those who were slaves in the factories during World War II. And Robert Bosch, as per his will, set up a Stiftung, which is a German type of charitable organization, foundation kind of thing, mandated in his will, which continues to this day to support some 800 social, cultural, and scientific projects annually. So they are doing their best to, whether it's rehabilitate their image after the war or actually make up for their part in it. That is more than the Tom and Gerry show can decide. But what I can decide, Tom, is this. And we did stray from this point a little while ago. You make a fucking pretty decent cordless drill.
Yeah, they make a fucking great drill. Do you know, I love too that there was German words, because German words are so much fun to say. Like there's no fun in like a charitable organization to say that. It's like, oh yeah, well, it's two words that are just fairly serious. But if somebody says, I'm making a Stiftung, there's just something. I'm so excited about the Stiftung that's coming.
There you go. There was the remarkable life of Robert Bosch, which, when I say remarkable, it was remarkable that he innovated and invented so much in such a short time, and then only to see it all be tarnished by the rise of the Nazis in Germany. Hey, you know what? Decide yourself whether you want to never buy a Bosch thing ever again, or whether you say, you know what, they did the best they could under very trying circumstances.
Oh, come on now. I think if people are going to get pissy over that, never, ever, ever drive a Volkswagen. How about we go straight to the fucking source? You know what I mean? Actually, never drive an Audi, never drive a Volkswagen, never drive a Skoda, never, and the amount that are, I could keep going. Don't ever drive a Bugatti Veyron. That's all I'm saying. Because Volkswagen, you know what, Tom, was the Führer's fucking brainchild.
When it comes to the Bugatti Veyron, Tom, never driving it, I'm way ahead of you on that. I don't think it's from.
I just said I'd throw it out.
I don't think it's from any sort of moral high ground on that. And that's it. That's our tool guys for today, Tom. I've got 50 more tool guys if anybody wants to hear about them. I think we'll save that for a later episode down the way. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. We might even go more into the depths of what people should have, because we keep getting asked genuinely by people, what should I have or where? We'll go into it. We'll go into it. We'll give you a step-by-step guide. I think it could easily be another one as to what you should have, because like that, the excitement that came over last week's guest Gordo Rochford when he bought his first drill in his mid to late 30s. First ever
Jesus
drill.
Christ.
And he's like a fucking cat with two arseholes.
I can't imagine what it is. You know, hey, yeah, it's I can't believe I can make holes in things. I'm like, how the fuck were you making holes in things before now, pal?
Paying a man. You're taking it down to a workshop to get it done.
Regardless of which, Tom, those are what we call not right now podcasts.
Exactly.
We're gonna worry about them down the way. But for now, if you enjoyed that podcast, and if you didn't, who knows? We would like to ask you to listen to more of our stuff, Tom, and you can do that by following us on our social medias. At Tom and Gerry Show will get you on Twitter and Instagram. If you want a separate, Jerry McBride will find me, Tom O'Mahony will find him. Search us in the social media platform of your choice, except for Facebook. We're not on that. I know we were like sort of both sidesing the argument of the Nazis in World War II when it came to Bosch, but when it comes to Facebook, we're steadily fuck no on that regards.
Okay, will be 20 minutes of me having crack at what you just said, but we're wrapping up the show here.
We're wrapping up the show. Yes, you will find us on social media, and what we will give you is we'll send up some pictures of the items that we've spoken about, some of the funkier tools that these guys brought to market down through the years that you may not be familiar with these days because they were misfires and they suck balls. We'll also throw you up a couple of links to some other bits and pieces that are of interest to you following this podcast. And not for nothing, if you follow us on social media, you'll also be able to find when we throw up new episodes.
If you've ever invented something yourself, we'd love to see it. We've all given a go at making a thing that sticks to a yoke and pulls it that way and thought we're a genius until it broke 2 seconds later. If you've done that, we'd fucking love to see it. We're in no way going to suggest that and align you with any socialist party or anything back in the day, but we'd love to see it. But what we'd also love to see is hitting subscribe. Is this your very first time landing on board because you just cannot resist the word tools in a podcast title? Have a look. We've rakes more back there. Hit subscribe. It'll arrive in whatever phone, tablet, whatever the Christ you listen to it on. Also, if you are listening on a platform that allows you to leave a comment, whether they're over on YouTube as well, if you want to leave one on Apple Podcasts, if you want to leave one on whatever platform you're listening to that allows you to leave a comment, please do. And give us a 5-star rating because it helps more people find it. If you can't do any of those things, just grab a screen grab and tag either one of the socials that Gerry just mentioned and let us know where you're listening. It tells people about the podcast. Tell them how much you love it. Tell them you've had the great time. Send them to us. We look after them for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, stick around for our bonus episodes on Thursday. And you know what? If this episode that we've given you here proves popular, who knows? Maybe we'll be back in a later season to let you all fucking know about the life and times of Alfred Karcher. Who fucking knows, Tom?
You said that because you got a power washer behind you.
Yeah.
I've got 2 Makita fucking bits down there. I can't believe we didn't. I got a fucking screw gun and a jigsaw. Can't believe
you brought the circular saw into the conversation there, Tom.
Oh, I did
earlier.
Actually. Yeah, I did. Yeah. Right enough. Yeah. But
edit this bit out, Tom. You sound foolish.
I'm going to edit in me pretending to be you and me having a conversation about the trials of Makita down through the years.
Other than that, I don't know what else to say to you fine people except enjoy your tools responsibly.
Good luck and thanks.